On today's episode of Locked On Wild, believe it or not, there are still some records Kirill Kaprizov has not yet achieved in Minnesota Wild history. Could he hit some of those numbers this season?
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. We are also your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we'll take a look at Kirill Kaprizov's pursuit of every single record in Minnesota Wild history. We'll take a look at where he is at right now and some of the records that he could eclipse this upcoming season based off of his current career averages. My name is Seth Toupal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, host of Locked On Wild since 2021, and a credentialed Minnesota Wild media member. And in keeping with the theme of what we've been talking about here over the last few days, just kind of zeroing in on just topics regarding some of the top players on this Minnesota Wild roster as we get closer to the start of the season, wanted to look at Kirill Kaprizov today. And there's a lot that you can talk about with Kirill Kaprizov, whether it be his line mates coming into the season, whether it be the potential looming status of his contract after this season. There are a lot of different things that we could discuss, but I think one that should certainly get some recognition here is just his overall pursuit of a record book for the Minnesota Wild that is going to be completely rewritten, I think, by the time his tenure, whether it be after this contract or after his next one, by the time his tenure is done, this record book is going to look completely different. And it already does in a lot of different aspects. Like just looking at from a season perspective, Kaprizov has a few of the best seasons in Minnesota Wild history all by himself. He has the record for most goals in a season with 47, most points in a season with 108. And for a team that had not had a player even reach the 90-point plateau, he now has seasons of 108 points and 96 points, as well as 3 seasons of 40-plus goals, which is also something that had only been done once before by Marian Gaborik. So it just, every number from a season perspective is pretty much already his. But there are still plenty of other records that are just waiting to be grasped before his season, before his career is done. Now, before we dive into, how long will it take for some of these others, let's just get a baseline to start as to what constitutes, an average pace for Kirill Kaprizov throughout his career. So obviously his first season in the league, 2020, 2021, was just a 55-game season. And in fact, actually, I think it was a 56-game season. 27 goals, 24 assists in a shortened season. The next year, Kirill played 81 out of 82 games, had 47 goals, 61 assists, 108 total points. 2022-2023, he missed time at the end of the year due to that injury at the hands of Logan Stanley. Played 67 games, but still had 40 goals, had 35 assists, 75 total points in that season. And then this past year, he played in 75 games. If you will recall, took him a little while to really get going at the early part of the season, but finished with 75 games played, 46 goals, 50 assists. The baseline projection, courtesy of hockeyreference.com, for an 82-game average for Kirill Kaprizov is 47 goals and 50 assists. Because if you look at the last two seasons, in 2022-2023, if you will recall, Kaprizov was on pace before his injury. He was on pace for 50 goals easy. Just the way he was playing, it felt like he was going to crack that ceiling with room to spare, if not for missing the final 15 games of the season. I think he came back in the last couple just to try to get himself into shape for the postseason. It was either he was practicing but didn't play, or he played in maybe one game just to kind of get his feet wet. But the main point being, if he doesn't miss those 15 games, it feels like he gets to 50 goals in that season for sure. And even this past year, missed 7 games. And again, that was a similar situation, injured this time by Dylan DeMello. If he doesn't miss those games, it feels like he could score 4 goals in 7 games and get to 50 this past season. So you look at his numbers over the last few seasons, he has been playing at pretty much a 50-goal pace, like right at 47. And from an assists standpoint, 2022, 2023 was definitely an outlier because that team just, the secondary scoring for that team was not great. And so the assist numbers were way down, but he is between a 50 and a 60 assist player per season. And it's not to say that this is going to be the norm going forward, but if you look at his numbers after he got himself right last season, he just took it to a completely different planet. From November 27th to the end of the season, Kaprizov had 78 points in 56 games. He scored 40 goals in those 56 games. And so he even had found a way to elevate his game even further once he got back and was healthy. And what do we know about Kirill going into this season? No injury issues looming like a dark cloud over the offseason work. We know that he was healthy going into the offseason, has the full offseason to get himself in shape for the season, and isn't going to have anything looming that could potentially slow him down to start off the season. And, one of the other things that needs to be mentioned is we've got a little bit of it's not a huge shift, but it is at least an understanding of modern times in the NHL. Under Dean Evison, you had a Wild team that played a much slower style of play, tried to be physical, tried to wear teams down to be able to take advantage in the second and third period. John Hynes, when he came in, at the very least, acknowledged the fact that, look, this is a game that is played on a fast pace. And so we saw a little bit of a stylistic shift to playing a quicker game and thus creating more opportunities, more possessions to be able to get the puck into the offensive zone and to score. And so if we look at that pace that Kirill was on once John Hynes took over, now he maybe doesn't play at that type of a pace because I think I stretched it out, and that's a 114-point pace that he was on once John Hynes took over. He maybe doesn't play at that level, but if this Wild team, at minimum, just tries to more keep up with opponents as opposed to slowing them down, that just means more chances and more opportunities for him to add goals, add assists, and to continue to climb the record book in many different categories. When we come back, we'll take a look at those specific categories that are in reach this season, who holds the records now, and whose name is going to be in second place by the time Kirill Kaprizov has anything to say about it. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. We are getting to the point in the summer, ladies and gentlemen. Labor Day is coming up this weekend, and after that, it'll be fall baseball and the start of the NFL season, which means you have plenty of great opportunities to go see your favorite teams play live. And Game Time can help with any of your ticket stresses. We know buying tickets is not an easy experience, and Game Time is here to help make that as stress-free as possible. Plus, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This is a feature you must turn on, such as all-in pricing. So make sure to head to the Game Time app so that you can save on the best deals around. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder for you, make sure that you get yourself joined into the Locked On Wild sweepstakes. We are giving you a chance to win 2 tickets to see the Minnesota Wild take on the Columbus Blue Jackets at home on opening night on October 10th. All you have to do is send us proof via a screenshot that you are subscribed to Locked On Wild on YouTube. Add your name as well, and then you are entered in. We will we'll draw the winner in early October, but don't delay in getting in. We already have a bunch of submissions already. Thank you to those that have already emailed. And if you're wondering why maybe you haven't gotten a reply, well, I put all of the entries into a separate inbox so that then I can just draw at random once we get to the point of having entries. So anybody that has submitted already, I have received them. Just hanging on to them until it gets time to draw the winner. So proof via a screenshot that you're subscribed to Locked On Wild on YouTube. Add your name in and email to lockedonwild@gmail.com, and you are entered in. Full rules can be found in the description of today's episode. So talking about the potential for Kirill Kaprizov to own every record that exists for this Minnesota Wild team. Now, some of these are going to take a minute, such as, games played is Mikko Koivu with 1,028. The only players that are in the realm of being able to eclipse that are Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin right now, who each are over 800. The big one is goals. In franchise history, the most goals ever scored by a Minnesota Wild player is Marian Gaborik with 219. Mikko Koivu second with 205. Zach Parise has 199. He is in third. And Kirill Kaprizov is at 160 through 4 seasons of NHL play. Easy math, 40 goals per game. So 160 goals for Kirill Kaprizov through his first 4 years in the league. But if we look at his 82-game average, 47 goals, 97 points. Let's just take a look at that number right now. So 47 goals on top of the 160 he already has. That gets him past Zach Parise. He needs 39 to pass Zach Parise this season. He then needs 45 to pass Mikko Koivu for second place. So if he gets 47, that would put him at 207 for his career. He's still 12 shy of Marian Gaborik for the all-time record at that point. Now, let's say he has just one of those insane seasons because his pace improved dramatically under John Hynes with Matt Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov on his line with him. let's say he has an insane season. If he scores 59 or more goals this year, if he scores 60, he has first place outright. 59, he ties Gaborik for the most in franchise history. But the most likely scenario is this. This is how I see this playing out. He'll pass Zach Parise. Barring injury, he should pass Zach Parise this year without any problems. He should pass Mikko Koivu this year without any problems. But let's keep this in mind, too. It's not something that may factor into the equation this year, per se. But there is a scenario in which Kirill's production slightly drops because the overall production around him improves, similar to where the Dallas Stars are at right now. You know, they have an incredibly deep lineup. You've got Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson on down the list. Only had 2 players with 30 or more goals this past season, but that's because they have so many guys that are capable of providing additional scoring. They don't need to rely heavily on one particular player. I would say that probably doesn't become a thing. It's not going to be a thing most likely this year, probably not the year after. But when some of these players, some of these prospects, Danilo Yurov, Liam Ogren, Riley Heights, when some of these guys jump into the mix and get themselves acclimated to NHL play, they should be able to take some of the piece of the pie from what Kirill is being asked to do. But even still, he's still going to get his. I'm not worried about Kirill going from 46, 47 goals to all of a sudden scoring like 25. I'm not worried about that. But it could be that 46 to 47 becomes 39 to 40. And those kinds of drops may not matter in the grand scheme of things if the supporting cast is better. But in record pursuit, they absolutely do. So I think Kaprizov will be standing in second place for sure by the time the season is done, barring any injuries in which he misses time. Those seem pretty attainable. Now, some of the others, it's gonna take a while because the current franchise leader in assists is Mikko Koivu at 504. Kirill Kaprizov in his career has 170. 16 assists gets him into the top 10. Jonas Brodin is 10th on the Minnesota Wild's all-time list with assists with 186. If he gets to the 200 assist mark, so 30 assists, that'll put him ahead of Matt Zuccarello, who has 197 and counting. If he gets 50 assists and gets to 220, that puts him in 6th place just ahead of Marian Gaborik, depending on how many Matt Zuccarello has this season. But the point being is another 50 assist season for him puts him into the top 10, puts him at 6th. If he gets to 60 assists and gets to 230, he jumps into the top 5, surpassing Mikael Granlund, who has 224 career assists. So another season of 50 to 60 assists will put Kaprizov into the top 5 all time, which means then if he gets to 230, he's still got to put another 270 assists on the board before he gets to 500 to put himself in position to capture Mikko Koivu's record. There's a huge gap between Ryan Suter at 314 and Mikko Koivu at 504. That's a lot of assists. And so Kaprizov is going to need, at a 50-point pace, even if he has a 60-point assist season this year, he'd need another probably 5 or 6 years of 50 assists to get himself in position to take that one. So that one's going to take a little more time to knock down. All-time points, Mikko Koivu is the leader of that record as well with 709 career points. Kirill Kaprizov currently sits at 330. So the easy math here is 4 100-point seasons for Kirill Kaprizov, and that mark is his all-time. because players that are still playing for the Minnesota Wild, Jared Spurgeon is 4th at 384. Spurgeon is probably about a 30 to 40 point defenseman when he's healthy and when he plays a full season. So even then, Spurgeon could pass Zach Parise this year with 16 points. He could pass him for 3rd all time. But even if he gets to 400, Kirill Kaprizov, if he's healthy and if he doesn't have any, which he typically doesn't, but if he doesn't have any long stretches of no goals like he had at the start of the season last year, 100 points, and that'll put Kaprizov into right around Marian Gaborik at number 2. 107 would get him into a tie with Gaborik, who has 437 career points. So if Kaprizov has a 108-point season, he sits in 2nd all time. That, again, is going to take a little longer for Kaprizov to break that one, because if there was one thing that Mikko Koivu was good at, it was assisting on goals. Some of the other records are going to be a little more tough. Kaprizov, in terms of goals created, Koivu is on top with 245.5. Kaprizov has 133.5. He's 5th all time. So if Kirill creates, and this is weird because I don't really know necessarily how many goals created, like what constitutes a good number for a player in terms of goals created. Is it like 50, 60? I don't really know. And so that's not one that I'm really worried about for Kaprizov. The couple of others that are within range here, even strength goals, Marian Gaborik leads with 154. Kirill Kaprizov has 102 right now. He's in 5th all time. If you look at Kaprizov's numbers over the last few seasons, even strength goals, he had 19 his rookie season, 33 in 21-22, 23 in 22-23, and 27 this past year, out of a possible 46 goals. So 25 to 30 even strength goals is pretty standard for Kirill. And so his 82 game average, 25 to 30, let's just say 27 just to split the difference. So if you look at the even strength goals, 27 even strength goals would get him to 129, which passes Zach Parise. But then Kaprizov would still need another 25 to pass, to tie Marian Gaborik. So 26 even strength goals to eclipse that one. So that's another probably 2-year proposition for Kirill, just based off of his current seasonal averages. And the final one that I'm going to look at, because some of these other ones, and I'll talk about them to finish off the show, but some of these others, it's amazing the numbers that he has put up without needing to get to some of these other records in team history. The other is power play goals. Kirill currently sits 4th with 58 power play goals. Zach Parise is number 1 in Wild history with 69 power play goals. So if Kirill has 11 power play goals this year, he will tie Parise. 12 would get him into first place all time. Here's Kirill's power play goals over the last few seasons. He had 8 his rookie year, 14 in 21-22, 17 in 22-23, and 19 in 23-24. So anything above 12, and that record is also his. And so you're looking at a good amount of records that are within striking distance for Kirill Kaprizov this season. And that's taking into account the fact that he is not going to be near the top in some other categories, which we'll discuss to finish the show. Plus, we'll also take a look a decade down the line. If things stay the way they are, where is Kirill going to be 10 years from now in statistical measurements? We'll discuss that as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder for you, make sure to check out Locked On NHL for your second listen today. Locked On NHL keeps you up to date all week long with some of the biggest headlines throughout the NHL. We keep you up to date with a wide array of panelists throughout the week, so make sure to tune in and make that your second listen here today. Continuing the topic of records that Kirill Kaprizov could grab this upcoming season. It's interesting to me, if you look at the record for the Minnesota Wild in shots on goal, Kirill Kaprizov is currently 10th on that list with 984 shots on goal. Mikko Koivu's number one with 2,270 shots on goal in his career. So if you look at his number of goals, he had 205 goals in his career on 2,270 shots. He's got a 500-shot lead on Zach Parise, who's number two. Kirill would need essentially 1,200 shots to get himself past Mikko Koivu. And for Kirill, if you look at his numbers, he is, if you average it out to an 82-game season, he is about a 290 shot per goal pace. So just under 300 shots per season. But the shooting percentage for all of his seasons at the NHL level has been between 15 and 17%. And so he doesn't need a huge amount of shots to be able to get to those high water marks for goals. Now, 300 is quite a bit, but it just amazes me at the number of shots now that's in about a 15-year career for Mikko Koivu. So you take that into account, and that isn't a ton of shots. But again, the Mikko Koivu career is based off of a large level of longevity. So I'll be interested to see if Kirill keeps his current pace, where some of those types of records end up. He's going to grab all the big ones, but some of these others just come down to him not being in positions to be utilized there. Like shorthanded goals. Wes Walz currently has the record there with 14. Kirill is not on the list as of right now because he doesn't play in shorthanded situations. Like, he's not a penalty kill guy. And so that's one that he just is. That's one that is not going to be a record that he really factors into. Game-winning goals is another one. Marian Gaborik had 43 game-winning goals throughout his career. Kirill is tied for fifth with 22. But what do we know about this Minnesota Wild team is that they've got Kirill Kaprizov, who is the engine. But you've got guys like Joel Eriksson-Ek. You've got guys like Matt Boldy. You've got guys like Ryan Hartman. Brock Faber has had game-winning goals. They just have way more options than the teams that Marian Gaborik was a part of that can get you that game-winning goal. And the amount of attention Kirill garners during the course of a game is one where in those late game situations, he usually is the one that is drawing most of the crowd. So it's possible over the course of the next couple of years that he could get to closer to that mark. But his career high in terms of game-winning goals is 8 this past season. He had 3 in his rookie year, 5 in 21-22, 6 in 22-23, and 8 this past season. So again, that's just another one too, that some of these are going to be harder to track because Kirill is just not in positions to get them. Now, hat tricks, Kirill has 5. Marian Gaborik has 9. Matt Boldy has 3. it would not shock me in the slightest if both of those players eventually pass Marian Gaborik. Kirill this past season, see if I can find the number of hat tricks that he had. I don't know if I will be able to here. He had 3 this past season. So, and all after the new year. So he had 3 this season. If he has another 3 or 4, he ties Gaborik. So that would be one that'll probably take 2 years at least for that record to fall. Now, what's to say 10 years down the line, where could Kirill Kaprizov be in some of these key statistical measures? If we take that 82 game average, 47 goals per year times 10, that's 470 goals. In addition to the 160 that he already has. So that's 630 goals. And if we go with the NHL records for goals all time, the most is obviously Wayne Gretzky with 894. 630 goals would put Kirill in 16th place all time, just ahead of Jarome Iginla with 625, and also Joe Sakic with 625. If he keeps that pace up for a 10-year period. Now, some of the other numbers to take an eye or keep an eye on would be total points. If Kirill goes another 10 seasons with 50 assists on average, so 97 points per year on average for another 10 years, that's 970 assists to add in with the 330 he already has, which would put him at 1,300 in terms of total points. That would put Kirill tied with Jarome Iginla again. Boy, he's just out to get Jarome Iginla. Tied with Jarome Iginla for 36th all-time with 1,300. Again, assuming seasonal averages for another 10 years. And so the reason I bring that up is because I know we all have in the back of our minds that dark cloud wondering if Kirill is going to stay here past his current deal, or if he is going to opt to try to go to an East Coast team, West Coast team, somebody else. But what I will stress is that is something that neither you nor I nor anyone other than those that are directly responsible for putting the team on the ice, that is not something that any of us have control over. And so I tell you this, for this upcoming season and for the next season at the minimum, I'm going to do my best to acknowledge that that next contract is an important thing, while also keeping in mind that we are watching somebody who is, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to go down as one of the few guys, he's going to go down as an all-timer if he keeps this trajectory up. He's going to go down as the best to ever do it for this Minnesota Wild franchise, and he's going to go down as, on a short list of players that really majorly impacted this game. And I'm glad that he is wearing Wild colors to do so. So there are going to be more records that fall this season, and I just hope that that Kirill continues to enjoy it here, and that the pieces get put in place that are going to allow him to stay and continue to do it. That's what we got for today's episode of Locked On Wild. As always, we appreciate you making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already, so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Locked On Wild has you covered every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.